to this webinar of Path Launch. I think NIC Lahore is also collaborating on it, on how to set up your company in Saudi Arabia. For those who don't, I think all of you know Path Launch, but just because it's being recorded, I'll mention that Path Launch is this wonderful community created by Ali Fahad, and I think it's doing remarkable work in connecting Pakistani startups. And this is and Pakistani talent all over the world. And I think this is Pakistan is going through some tough time, and it's important for Pakistani companies to think out of the box, to explore opportunities. I think every challenge creates opportunity, and perhaps Saudi Arabia, in my mind, is that God-sent opportunity at the right time, which I think every Pakistani company should explore and every Pakistani talent should explore. My name is Ali Khwaja. I'm the founder of KTrade. It's the #1 stock trading platform in Pakistan. But it's relevant for this conversation because we have just expanded to Saudi Arabia, and we have set up in Saudi Arabia, and we will be announcing more about that going forward. And so we have gone through this journey of a Pakistani company setting up in Saudi Arabia. And Astrolabs, and who is in this audience, was helpful in our journey. We use Astrolabs for setting up in Saudi Arabia. So Saad will tell you more about the services of Astrolabs, and the other gentleman we have on the call, Tasawar. He is based in Riyadh, and he also helps Pakistani setup companies or companies set up in Saudi Arabia. And Tasawar, I got really good recommendations about him from people in Saudi Arabia. So I was with him at an event called the Masic Forum, which is this. Masic is one of the big families, one of the top families in Saudi Arabia, and they have this event over there. And when I met Tasawar, there were all of these Saudi people who were coming and introducing, saying hello to him, and he didn't recognize them, but they recognized him. So a lot of people gave very, very strong recommendations about him. So I requested both Saad and Tasawar to come on this webinar to tell us about the process of setup, or how a company can set up in Saudi Arabia. The format of this call would be that I'll ask first Saad and then Tasawar to talk for 5 minutes about what their companies do and how can they facilitate this process and what is the process. And then we will open up for questions. And for questions would be great if you can write them on chat, and then I'll read it to the two gentlemen. So with that, over to Saad. Saad, you are the co-host, so you can share the presentation, and would love to know more about Astrolabs and how you can help companies set up in Saudi.
Perfect. So everyone can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So my name is Saad. Obviously, I'm the partnerships manager with Astrolabs. Astrolabs has been building ecosystems, specifically expanding companies into Saudi Arabia for quite some time now. We've expanded more than 350 companies, one of them being KTrade, obviously. Now, just to highlight Saudi Arabia a little bit, a lot of times before, if you look at the early 2000s, everyone, when eyes were on the Middle East, it would be Dubai, right? And I like to, if you're looking for a comparison, Saudi Arabia right now is the UAE on steroids, if that's a good enough explanation. In terms of Astrolabs, we do we've helped multiple different companies within different industries, as you can see. Retailo being a Pakistani startup, their head office is actually located at Astrolabs in Riyadh, because we do have a co-working community there. In terms of what Astrolabs does, we were one of the first companies to sign an MOU back in 2018 with the Ministry of Investment in Saudi Arabia, and we've been helping companies with market entry. So not just your licensing and your registration, but ongoing support in terms of post-incorporation, what that would look like in terms of providing that community access for companies that are new entrants into the industry. We partner up with various investors and VCs within the region, and also multiple different government entities to be able to communicate. What really sets us apart, I would say, is our on-ground operations team with a country like Saudi Arabia, and obviously the communication is usually a huge issue, and I think the Tasawar would agree also. And we've solved for that by having an on-ground team of more than 30 individuals. So providing that account management, providing that seamless communications, weekly roadmap, updates from your assigned account manager, we've been able to facilitate the expansion for all of these companies. And it's in terms of the size of the company, it doesn't really matter. It's been anywhere from startups all the way to established Fortune 500 companies that are part of the NASDAQ stock exchange. In terms of our experience, what it looks like for a lot of companies is the greatest thing is that it is 100% foreign owned. And obviously it is case by case. So we can have that discussion, and more than happy to answer some of your questions, but high level, because I was told to keep this under 5 minutes. I think that would be a brief about Astrolabs and what we do on the expansion front.
Thank you, Saad. And so now moving to Tasawar, but before that, I'll just summarize like just some of the key points which Saad mentioned, which I think are important, is that, as Saad said, you can have 100% ownership. Saudi is Dubai on steroids. That's well said, Saad. I'll use that comment, which means there are a lot of opportunities. The market was previously closed to 100% ownership. You could not form a company over there. And in fact, until like a few years ago, you couldn't even get a tourist visa to go there. So now it's changing, which means that my suggestion to all of you will be that, whatever you have heard about Saudi in the past, like delete that. You need to form new mental map of the place. And the closest mental map is in terms of where the country wants to be is a vibrant open market, which is attracting technology companies. So I think there are opportunities for all of us on the call, whether you are a company or an individual. Riyadh alone wants to increase its population by 5 million by 2030. 5 million, it won't grow organically. So I think it's an opportunity for Pakistani tech talent to move there and participate in the growth. Tasawar is the person on ground. He's a Pakistani. He was in Dubai. He has helped companies in both set up in Dubai as well in Saudi Arabia. He has helped governments set up their startup ecosystems. He will tell more about that. So with that, over to you, Tasawar.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having us. So quick background to myself. I worked with government 5 years ago, moved out to Saudi Arabia 2 years ago, and have a very good expertise of licensing both in UAE and Saudi Arabia. We have a very unique business model. We predominantly work with global corporate service providers, lawyers, and kind of people who look to expand their clients' business into Saudi Arabia, and we're kind of their operations support in Saudi Arabia. And we help a lot of corporates who are expanding pretty much from everywhere in the world into Saudi Arabia and make the process seamless and easy. When I came out here 2 years ago, people used to tell you that it takes 6 to 9 months to set up a company. I'm very proud to say that we can deliver within 1 or 2 months, depending on what you see as that delivery. And really, it's one of the most fantastic places. So Saudi is experiencing huge growth. It's obviously the largest country in the GCC. There's the geography of Saudi Arabia and the areas to do business between Riyadh, Jeddah, Dammam, and the beautiful projects that you're hearing of with the likes of Diriyah and Neom, Red Sea developments. The opportunities are truly endless. There's the startups who are being supported from the likes of MESA, where there's entrepreneurs that can set up in Saudi Arabia, and the costs are significantly reduced. And Saudi is attracting the who's who and the best in the world of multinationals to come into Saudi Arabia and set up. So we're supporting with all of that. We support with everything from the initial incorporation, the work that needs to be done abroad, right through to hand-holding how to navigate and doing your business within the country, whether that means tax and additional support services, office space, and so forth. We're agnostic to sector, and we support in every single way possible. So that's kind of a quick summary. Our core business does come from other service agents sending us that business and dealing with clients directly and trying to make the whole process seamless.
Great. No, thank you. Thank you for describing your backgrounds and telling. I hope now everybody on the call has like 2 strong references in terms of who to contact if you want to set up over there. AstroLabs, as I told you, we use AstroLabs, highly recommended by one of the largest VC funds who are in Saudi, who told us to look at AstroLabs. And then I also checked with my one of our investors, Shuruk Partners. They also recommended it. So very stable pair of hands. And then you have Tasawar, who's also done it in the region, and he's extremely helpful guy. As I told you that, strongly recommended by local people. So you have two credible and reliable people here. People have already started asking questions. I'll go to the questions quickly, but before that, just a little bit of background in terms of what's happening in Saudi Arabia. So from what I thought was extremely helpful was that Saudi Arabia has a document which is called Vision 2030. Now that's their blueprint. That's their North Star. They have told that this is the direction where they want to go. And unlike other markets where, you might have an idea and you might say that, I want to be the Uber of America and want to take that in Saudi. I think Saudi is not like that. I think the best way of approaching Saudi is to read what they want. And what they want, they've clearly written that in this document called Vision 2030. And so they have told you what they want. And then now, so it's up to you to see how can you be a part of that. And I think as long as it's part of their Vision 2030, they will be extremely supportive of the idea and receptive to your business. And I think your business will work well if it fits well in that. How is Vision 2030 being implemented? There are various implementation agencies for it, but one entity you should look at is PIF. Now, PIF I've been told that on a daily basis, they make like 5 new companies or 5 new investments, various structures. PIF is not just a monolithic entity which is doing things on their own. They have other sub entities within that. So for example, they have a fund for investing in computer games. They have something called Sanabil, which invests in other funds as well as does direct investment in startups. They have AI entity. They have an entity called EDWP, which invests in Chinese technology companies, which wants to come in Saudi Arabia. So that's the entity you need to study and see where you fit for them. I think Astrolabs and Tasawar both can help you navigate that sector as well. So with this, I'm going to the questions, and questions. Ali has been posting the questions on chat. So the first question is, do international companies need to get into a JV with Saudi companies to do business in Saudi? If you incorporate a company in Saudi, do you need to hire local citizens before sponsoring international workers? So the first question, my answer on the first one is that you don't need to have a JV, but it might be a preferred option, but would love to throw this question to both of you. That A, do you need a local partner for your JV? And secondly, what about hiring local citizens? What are the laws around that?
Shall I kick off?
That's what I was also thinking. How we do. However, you'd want to software.
So kick off, Saad, and then I'll follow up.
All right. So here's the thing. Based off of our experience, no. Yes and no, right? So there's a few different license types. It depends on what your business activities look like. So if you're looking for the most common, which is a service investment license, based on your question, it's not really clear what line of business you're in. So if you're looking for the service investment license, recommendation would be, no, you do not need a Saudi partner to be able to do so. It could be an expansion off of the back of your parent entity anywhere in the world. Now, if you're looking for a professional license and companies who are dealing in engineering, consulting, any sort of legal, any sort of those activities, then there is a requirement for a 25% shareholder who is a Saudi national with the credibility and with a qualifications in that specific area. Now, what we've noticed is a lot of times companies will go into a JV agreement for a couple of reasons. One being if they're looking to partner up with a Saudi entity to be able to trade within the kingdom. And second being just for the purposes of exposure or based on their agreement of entering KSA.
Tasawar, do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, look, I 100% agree with what Saad mentioned. And I think, a lot of people want to have a joint venture partner for distribution, support, and access to the local country. That's obviously always a benefit. Do you need a local partner conventionally for a services business? The answer is no. And is there benefits of having a joint venture? You can always incorporate in Saudi Arabia and create multiple joint venture agreements which helps you distribute or do business across the kingdom. Is that needed? No. Can you independently grow your business? I know there's some very successful companies here who are growing without the need of local support. Absolutely. Having a local business and a local incorporation allows you better legal structure to also go into those agreements. So, just covering why you would need to set up a local entity and then go into joint ventures. Obviously, when you have two local entities, you're using a common legal framework, and that obviously helps going into those agreements. So those are things to consider when setting up in Saudi Arabia.
Got it. So just to summarize, like there are certain sectors, certain work which are called services sector. So for example, an IT consulting company, an IT services company making software from Pakistan would probably fit into that sector. So if you are a services company, then you can have 100% owned subsidiary. But in others, if you're not in services, if you are in some other sectors, then you need a local partner. What about the second question, which is about hiring local Saudis? We have always heard that that's a big hurdle and a big cost item. What are the rules on that?
So I'm just going off of the previous thing where I just
Saad, you go first, and then I'll
ask. So by the way, one of the things about Astrolabs is we do talent recruitment within the kingdom, right? And what we've noticed is in terms of when it comes to whether or not you need that local Saudi national hire, yes, the answer is yes. After the GM, you would need to hire and meet certain Saudization quotas. Generally, what that quota looks like is between 25% to 33% is the general rule of thumb, right? Your first hire does need to be a Saudi national to be able to access to the different portals. And then you're able to unlock 3 to 4 non-Saudi allowances. If you have hiring that's ongoing, then that looks more like 33% of the ratio would be Saudi national. In terms of the minimum wage, it is 4,000 Saudi riyals for a Saudi national. But obviously, because retention and because Saudization is such a key point now, our recommendation is you would need to, in order to retain the right Saudi national and to add value to your company, instead of just having what the old school mindset was of the silent Saudi, we would recommend 10 to 12,000 Saudi riyals for like an entry level role. This is just based off of our work in recruitment. In specific to what Saudization or localization looks for your business, it would be dependent on the Nitakat portal, which is what's provided to each company when they're setting up, right? And when they're incorporating, this essentially shows you where you're at in terms of your allowances to be able to hire non-Saudi nationals and what your current standing is based on your current localization hiring employees.
Thank you for that. So Tasawar, if I understood it correctly, when you set up your company, you get one license for a general manager. That general manager can be from outside. So, and then once you've done that, then you need to hire a Saudi person. And once you hire the first Saudi person, then you can hire like 3 non-Saudis. Is that correct from what Saad mentioned?
Yes, correct. So just so you know, when you set up a foreign company, you fall under MESA. Most people just hire one general manager. You can have 3 C-level individuals, so a CEO, general manager, and a chairman or a senior director. But then after that, yes, you have to hire a Saudi to unlock, and you go into the Nitakat portal, and you have a green light. Well, you have a traffic light system where ultimately you don't want to fall into red because you don't have enough Saudi nationals you hire. The common concern that I found with clients what we found is people are always concerned hiring when they don't know the country very well. Having had a significant amount of Saudi nationals working for me, and our team consists, other than myself, of only Saudi nationals. It's honestly a blessing in disguise. It's so easy when you're dealing with people from the country. They understand how things work from a business standpoint. They understand how the local country runs. So hiring foreigners is very expensive because you have to bring somebody into a country that doesn't know the place very well, and just getting an expert to be comfortable in Saudi has not been easy. Whereas if you have people from the country, it makes a huge difference, and there's a benefit to your company. What Saad said about retention rate is very factual. However, talented people get offered good jobs, and unfortunately, retention is very difficult. So you should pay well. This does not mean that you have to pay through the nose, but talented people get picked up by others very quickly. The last 5 years have been very different in this country, and as a result, the really talented people that stand out get picked up by other very good companies and paid well for it because they can see the value of that. So that's something to keep in mind when making offers.
And Tasawar, I think you would agree with me, sorry, just last point, that the misconception that Saudi nationals, in terms of their work ethic and their value that they're bringing into the company, it's a huge misconception, because we have, like you said, even you're in the same situation. We employ quite a few Saudi nationals for our entire operations team, and the values that they're bringing in, especially the newer generation, I feel like it is something that sometimes we just have a misconception of, because we have the thought of landing for Umrah, for example, right? And what that experience used to be about 5 years ago, very different now. So I just did want to highlight that fact also.
Yeah, look, honestly, since I moved here, the amount of talented people that I've come across is phenomenal. And if I could, or had the bandwidth to just help Saudi nationals who are talented get into the right career, there's an opportunity there, right? So if anybody in the crowd is looking into that, they should certainly consider it. But it's the work ethic is very good. The labor laws are equal for everybody, so it's not different for expats, and it's not different for Saudi nationals. It's the same for everybody. It's pretty common sense, and we can cover labor laws a bit later if you'd like. But it's very easy. And like I said, I run a business right now, but everybody's Saudi other than myself, and there's no problem at all.
Thank you for highlighting that. King Abdullah sent 120,000 Saudis on scholarships abroad, mainly to the US, and a lot of them have come back. And I think that pool of talent is visible across the country. And so thank you for bringing it up, that the links from an earlier point, that I think we need to change our mental map and the fears which we have of Saudi Arabia, because the Saudi of which I saw now was very different from the Saudi of 2008 when I first went there to invest as a hedge fund manager. And that's the exciting thing about Saudi Arabia, that the country has totally changed over the last few years. Moving to the next question, you talked about the Saudization, and I'm just jumping through the questions. So there's a question that, is the tax structure also same for a Saudi entity versus a foreign entity? And so that's the first question, and I'll come then to the second question, which is that, what are the overall fee for setup? So, if we were to choose Astrolabs and Tasawar, what's the kind of fee we are talking about over here in terms of setup?
Okay, so in terms of taxes, generally there's 3 types of taxes, and I feel like the second question is kind of putting me and Tasawar head to head in terms of competitiveness of our offering.
And that's why I want to put it there. That's exactly why I wanted to ask that.
So maybe we could do a bidding situation, Tasawar. No, I'm kidding. So look, generally there's 3 types of taxes that foreign companies should know. Okay, it is 20% on net profits, 15% on VAT, and 5 to 20% on withholding tax or dividends that are being paid outside of Saudi Arabia. Specifically to dividend, because I feel like for foreign companies, that's the most important thing, is how are you getting your profits out? There's 5% that's usually applied on dividends that's being transferred outside of Saudi Arabia. In terms of, and Tasawar, can you, if there's any insights that you have on tax, if you can just add, and then we can answer the second question.
Let me ask a specific question on that. What about, Tasawar, what about if a Saudi company gives revenues to a Pakistani company? So let's say if somebody in Pakistan, he has an IT services company in Pakistan, and he sets up a offshore entity in Saudi for winning local business, and then he gives revenue contract to the Pakistani entity, what will be the tax implication on that revenue?
That's where the 5 to 50% withholding tax kicks in. So actually, you should have a structure. And again, I always throw in a disclaimer that someone should seek a professional tax advice and always give those referrals, just because tax is a very complex structure down here. PwC have a very good article, couple of pages outlining everything. So happy to share that post call. However, depending on the type of reasons for sending that money back, that ranges between 5 and 15%. And you have to kind of show that and pay that withholding tax. Otherwise, you'll get fined very, very quickly. So when it comes to tax, you obviously register with Zatka, and you have to do your annual filing. And if you're sending money abroad, depending on the reason, you are paying withholding tax, and you have to declare that, and you have to file. You have to submit that payment as well. So if you're sending out 100,000, assume that you are paying 5% to 50% of that. So there's two things: it encourages you to do business within the country, and also encourages you to keep a certain amount of money within the country as well. The companies abroad have various structures, so they have internal agreements of payment structures. They have a loan structure sometimes where how they're funding the Saudi operation, especially in the first few years. We can cover that at a different time, I hope, because tax is far more complex, and I don't want to be giving any kind of form of tax advice. But people find very cool ways of reducing the exposure, especially early years. At the same time, the country's making, you make a lot of money because of the size of doing business here. So paying taxes is pretty normal. The question that we didn't answer was for a Saudi company, how much do they pay? So Saudi company meaning a company that's owned 100% by a Saudi national or a GCC national for that matter, and they will pay 2.5% zakat rather than 20% corporate tax. So that's the only thing that we didn't answer.
Thank you. And now moving to the big question, which is the fee. The question is more about the fee for OPEX of a business, but I do want to ask you about your charges. I can again put my view on it from my experience. And we use AstroLabs. We were told that there are cheaper options available, but we were told that AstroLabs is a stable pair of hands and you're reliable, so you should go with them because you don't want to make a mistake on it. Having said that, when I was meeting MISA, which is the Ministry of Investment in Saudi Arabia, and I told them about how much I paid, they thought that I overpaid a lot. They were saying that you should have used us, and we would have facilitated you easier, much more cheaper rate. So with that, but we still went with AstroLabs because of the reason I told you, and I'm glad that we did. So we had I had a good experience. So hence, there's a recommendation as well, but with the caveat that the fee might be higher than other options. So with that, over to you, Saad and Tasawar.
Wow, way to make an introduction to our fees, Ali. But no.
I do want you to give better rates to my other people from Pakistan. Hence, there's a element. Yeah.
I do agree with you in the sense that yes, MISA's initial offering is would be cheaper generally. So our rate at Astralabs ranges between 45,000 Saudi Riyal AED or Saudi Riyals to 115,000. In terms of our pricing and the reason why sometimes we are called a little bit more, expensive, if you want to, be transparent, is because our operational overheads don't allow us to be able to provide the service that we provide while decreasing our costs. In terms of your expenses for just the government fees, I think that's relevant. You are looking at about 40 to 50% of our pricing is government charges. So generally, like that's what our structure is, and again, it's case to case. We are able to deliver within the 3 to 4 months that, you know, as promised, which is why obviously then that's a reflective of our cost. But with that being said, any companies that are I was actually in Karachi recently, just a couple of weeks ago, and we are looking into incentivizing companies from Karachi, from Pakistan, not just Karachi, but from Pakistan, as well as our relationships with like Hala Ventures, for example. We're doing a webinar tomorrow for companies from Jordan and Egypt and countries like that. We are looking at a more incentivized rate because we understand what that reflects in terms of their in-house currency.
That's lovely to hear. So maybe like you can have a special rate for park launch companies, and Ali Fahad probably can, or you know, that's something which Tasawar can do. So Tasawar, over to you.
Yeah, so look, I'm aware of the market pricing. I would say that what Saad mentioned is kind of true, that you have to keep in mind the cost of doing business in Saudi is quite high, and running an effective operation is, you know, it's important because clients, once they pay, they want delivery very, very quickly. Our model is very different to that of Astrolabs. So we run the operations for, you know, service providers around the world. So we can afford to be lean and a little bit kind of budget friendly. So I think what I'm happy to do is create a, you know, a specific pricing for some of the people on this forum, and especially if we're helping Pakistani entrepreneurs coming into Saudi Arabia, create something that's kind of more budget friendly. I could throw out some pricing now, or I can just come out with a sheet. So anybody that asks and mentions this this particular webinar, we can send very specific pricing to them, so it makes their life easier.
Great, thank you to hear that. I'm really glad to hear that, and thank you for the offer. Now, the next question is that, can you set up a company completely virtually in Saudi Arabia, or do you need to visit for the process of setup? And maybe Saad, you can take that question.
So yes, I believe, Ali, if you remember, based off of your experience with us, the process, you're looking at about 3 to 4 months, right? Out of which 2 months, there is a power of attorney that's issued to our on-ground operations team. So the Saudi nationals that we employ are actually communicating with the 11 different ministries to be able to successfully get you the progress. Where you do need to come in, however, whoever the assigned GM from your entity would be for the parent country, they would be coming in near the end of the 2nd, beginning of 3rd month to be able to take over. Like, that's when we're sort of doing the handover process, what we like to call it, where we're hand-holding them to get their permanent residency in the kingdom, activate all the different portals, and then use our relationships with the different banks in the kingdom to be able to open up and set up a bank account. So you do not need to be in Saudi Arabia for the entire process. However, you are required to come in, obviously, to take over your company once we are going towards the operational side.
Thank you. There's a question, and Tasawar, maybe I'll just flip the question. I'll just jump between the two of you.
No.
Can someone start a company with a family Iqama?
No. So they already resident here, and they don't have a company abroad.
Yes,
so
I think that's
so
what
we've had, yeah. So no. So we've had clients who already have their own businesses outside of the country, and then they wish to set up a company here and then move from their current employer over to their own company. That can be done. If they're an employee of a company and they wish to set up a company and they're non-GCC national, the answer is no.
Somebody is saying that previously one could establish 100% foreign-owned company in Saudi Arabia.
With Sagia, yes. With Sagia, yes. Previously.
Yes, but they are saying that there was a common opinion that ministries do not find Sagia firms credible. Therefore, most of the Sagia firms were not able to compete with locally established firms. Is this still the case? I think Sagia now is MESA. So is this still the case?
No, look, sorry, I'm jumping in on this, but just look, SAGIA and MISA, pretty much the same thing now. MISA companies are designed for foreign corporate setting up, and obviously the credibility straight away there because the international corporates are expanding out, or the international entrepreneurs and part of the entrepreneur ecosystem are setting up in Saudi Arabia. Local companies obviously have their niche because they know the local ecosystem very well. So if you've been here all your life and you've been doing business in a certain sector for the last 10, 20 years, of course you have credibility because of the time you spent into the country, not because of who you are in the country. But that said, if Astrolabs will echo this, but there's all these large corporates coming into Saudi Arabia because there's so much business down here. There's not enough companies locally to do that. And there's a need for international groups to come in and capture some of that business.
And Saad, question to you. Do you have any insights about these special economic zones which are being set up? Because it seems that they have better tax incentives. Any insight from either of you on the SEZs?
I love Tasawar's smile because this is one question I think we get literally all the time. So I'll share my insights, and then if there is something additional, you can share that. Look, like if you look at the UAE, for example, right? Everyone's familiar with free zones in the UAE, right? The biggest misconception right off the bat is the special economic zones are just like the free zones in the UAE, where you're able to have 100% foreign owned and the certain tax incentives that you would get. What we fail to understand a lot of times is that is a misconception, because with the MISA, service investment license or industrial investment license or what have you, you are able to expand into Saudi Arabia and get a mainland entity, which means you would be able to be operational within the entire kingdom itself. So that would not be the case in terms of free zones. Now, the special economic zones, the vision for that, and we actually had a conversation internally with a contact from there. I'm trying to be a little political in terms of what I'm able to release in terms of information, but those are, in the sense, those are specifically for companies within those sectors. So Saudi Arabia's vision is to have companies come into those different economic zones to be able to operate for those sectors. Like you have a economic zone that's more focused on logistics. There's one that's focused on AI. So then the companies that are coming in are automatically going to be, within those industries. Now, in the past couple of days, we might have heard some announcements of the special economic zone, a forum where they announced and also provided license to multiple entities. Those entities were all billion-dollar entities, right? And that was specifically positioned to be able to outline exactly what those special economic zones mean. But yes, there are incentives in terms of Saudization, in terms of taxation. There are certain incentives that will be provided. However, very limited in our scope in terms of what that looks like. And I don't know if Tasawar, you have any details that I might not have, that I might be learning from this webinar also then.
No, I think you answered it beautifully. I'm very politically correct. So look, I think, just to echo what you've said is, of course, those are sector-focused economic zones, attracting very specific type of companies globally. And, if you were to look at it in layman terms, those companies' objective is to build on the overall Saudi ecosystem and benefiting from being here, thus incentives are provided. And at the same time, they benefit from being down here and financially benefit, right? So at the very, very specific sectors, I think the difficulty has, how, obviously I've lived in UAE for the best part of 16 plus years, is someone coming from the UAE is expecting a similar framework. And something that was mentioned to me when I first moved out to Saudi Arabia is this is one country. So you do business and you set up something in Riyadh, Jeddah, Dammam, wherever you are, you can do business across the country, whether you're with MISA or you're with the Ministry of Commerce. you are able to do business in any parts of Saudi Arabia, and they don't distinguish between being in an economic zone versus a non-economic zone. Those economic zones, optically, from what I'm seeing right now, is attracting very kind of serious international corporates, which will add value to that sector. They're not, and I'm not seeing anybody being attracted for the purpose of just saving tax or saving a little bit of how many Saudis they hire. That doesn't help, a very flourishing country. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you for that. This question has come in various forms. So let me just rephrase this question that, if I set up a company in Saudi Arabia and I have a business in Pakistan, can I then sponsor visas for my Pakistani employees to come to Saudi Arabia for, let's say, 3 to 6 months and do work over there? And then how does the regime work on the visas then?
So there's a couple of ways of doing it. Obviously, first, ideally, they're trying to reduce, like previously, consultants would be coming in and out of Saudi Arabia. I think Tasawar, you can agree, any flight that you get on, you see a bunch of suits in the morning, and then those are the same people coming back to Dubai in the evening, right? They're trying to change that a little bit. So yes, if you do have employees who are required there for temporary purposes, you are able to issue certain business visas. In terms of having permanent employees, as long as you're meeting those Saudization quotas, you can easily then be able to sponsor them and get their Iqama permanent residency for them to be able to be functional in Saudi Arabia, right? So, I mean, it just depends case by case. However, having temporary employees just to be able to save Saudization and not have to, align with that, our recommendation would be like it would be against it. And again, you are not able to get like an individual's bank account set up on those business visas. You would need an Iqama to be able to do that, which is the permanent residency. So if you do have permanent employees, our recommendation would be have them be get their Iqama, get their work permit issued. However, if there are more of a contractual basis, then maybe the business visa might be an option.
Thank you. Saad, is a follow-up question for you, which is that you listed a few VC funds in Saudi Arabia on your slide in terms of raising money. Do those VC funds require the companies to be set up in Saudi Arabia? Or the second follow-up question is that if you have a Saudi incorporated company, would it be easier for those VC funds to then invest in you? So anything from a point of capital raising perspective for a Saudi incorporated company?
Interesting. Very, very relevant to my role here at Astrolabs. So what we do is we partner up with various VCs like your Waid, which is Aramco's venture arm, Hala Ventures, King Abdullah University, SDC, SCV, sorry. So these different ventures our relationship with them works based on the fact that if they're looking to invest in certain portfolio companies outside of Saudi Arabia, we will then work with these portfolio companies and help expand them into the kingdom, right? However, it's not like they have a specific requirement for you to be set up prior to. Most funds, what we're seeing based on our experience, they do one of the hidden or straightforward contingencies would be that you expand into the kingdom, right? However, they are very much looking at different countries, especially Pakistan. I know for a fact that Shuruk is doing quite a bit of work in Pakistan. Hala Ventures has invested in Pakistan before. So yes, they will invest in these companies, but eventually they would want them to be expanded into Saudi Arabia just because of market size, market growth, and the Vision 2030 alignment. It's a place that startups would flourish as entrants.
Thank you. Several questions for you. Can you go a bit deeper on certain services such as architecture? And there was another question about another sector, which is law firm. For architecture and setting up a legal firm, can they still set up as services company and be 100% owned? So that's first part of the question. And the second part of the question is that do they require approval from industry bodies within Saudi Arabia as well?
Yeah, no problem. So, look, I think one of the things I've enjoyed or seen in Saudi is the requirement for professionalism of showing a certain amount of qualification. So, I believe architecture, especially the ability to submit drawings. So, there's two types. So, most people who are in that business submit drawings and get municipal approvals and get third-party approvals. You would need a Saudi partner for that, because you have somebody who's academically qualified and registered within the country that can submit those drawings on your behalf. There are companies who come out and provide services, however, don't have the qualifications, which are 100% foreign owned, and partner with a local firm as well. And that's what we discussed kind of earlier on. They can partner with the firm, and the local partnership allows them to get the municipal approvals and those drawings that are valid within the country. If you look at it from a logical standpoint, you're submitting drawings, let's say for buildings, they need to conform to certain regulations within the country, and regardless of your experience, you should be able to show those academic qualifications. And you had a second question, which I don't remember. What was the question again?
About the legal lawyers. So what about
so there has been, and Saad, maybe you could jump in where needed. There has been talks of lawyers can own a law firm 100%. I've inquired on behalf of a bunch of friends who own law firms, and I hope, I think I've not seen anybody set up 100%, but there are talks of international law firms being able to set up down here without the need for a local partner. Look, I think it goes back to the same thing where for now it also makes sense to have a local Saudi partner, because there's someone who's qualified within the country supporting you on the ecosystem of Saudi law and not just using international law in a country that has its own legal framework.
I completely agree with you. So, yeah, I completely agree with you, Tasawar. Just to piggyback on what you were saying earlier. So for all companies that are looking to expand, I think one of the first steps for expansion is you have a look at the ISIC codes, right? Which are in the UK, they're the SIC activities. And there's the sheet which is publicly available, and you can identify exactly what your business activities fall under. Now, when it comes to legal framework and legal companies, legal consulting or firms that are looking to set up, usually that would fall under the professional license. Now, we know as one of the prerequisites or one of the requirements to be able to set up a professional investment license business activity company, you would need a 25% shareholder who is a Saudi national with qualification. So in this specific example, there would need to be a lawyer who has a 25% shareholding in your company. Again, these are one of those activities that you are, like Tasawar said, better off going with a Saudi national to begin with, just because of their expertise in understanding the laws of land.
So you said it very clearly that essentially there's a list of ISIC codes, and you're saying that list is available. Where is it? How can people find it? I know that I will send that list by your colleagues, but how can other people find it?
So you can, I believe it should be available on Google. Again, like these are resources that we
don't share the secret, Saad. Don't share the secret, and make them come to us and we'll send it to them.
No, honestly, look, again, so like for us, it's all about transparency, right? So if there is access to resources, and Tasawwur is the exact same, regardless of him talking about sharing the secrets, it's about, like the biggest challenge in expanding to Saudi Arabia is that fear of what it looks like. Yes, we've simplified the process. Yes, we've made it seamless. Yes, we have operations in-house, but at the same time, it's scary to sometimes even think about it. But we would like to tell people that yes, through various different, like entities like the Ministry of Investment, they are making it easier now. So that ISIC sheet is available. And again, either me or Tasawwur, whoever you choose, or both of us can share that sheet and make it readily available. Ali, I'll share a few documents that you can share with the PAK launch community. So then they have access to that. And then based off of that, if they want to have additional conversations, we'd be more than happy to have that.
Thank you. So yes, so there's a list of given by MISA of ISIC codes. If your industry if your company fits in that ISIC code of category of business, then you do. And if it comes as services company, then you don't need a local partner. If it falls under professional services, then you need 25% local shareholding. Ali Fahad has
I think
already
Ali just shared it.
Yeah, he just shared it with the group, yes.
Great. So and somebody else has asked about HR company, and maybe Saad, you can answer on this. Does the HR company fall under professional services, or does it fall under services?
That's HR companies are a very, very interesting question to deal with, because yes, we do talent, but we do it based off of our UAE entity. HR, honestly, there is no activity that we've seen in terms of that is specifically for HR. Companies that are looking to do something similar usually would go with a service investment activity known as hire management consulting, to be able to have the 100% foreign owned, while at the same, like, again, it's there is no specific that says HR. I don't know, Tasawar, I feel like Tasawar smile says that there might be some secret.
No, you're absolutely right. Higher management consulting is a favorite word because it offers a solution. Look, so we've just set up a couple of executive search firms, very high-end firms who work with all of the who's who of the government of Saudi Arabia and place a lot of their C-suite candidates. And they've been looking for answers. And, I've asked them, why don't they ask the government to give a solution? Because we don't have it. So look, I think UAE had a similar issue. When I moved out there 16 years ago, HR companies are typically known as manpower solution companies, where you are providing manpower at high volumes. Which is not the case for simple HR placement firms, whether it's contingent or executive search, where they take some sort of retainer. So higher management solution, and in the UAE, the equivalent used to be management consulting, because you're consulting the management on certain strategic hires that they should be making, but not so much on hiring 1,000 staff for the purpose of a construction project of some sort. So that's where the difficulty is. And I understand why it's kind of regulated and there's no real solution, because it's the case in the UAE when I first moved out there. I'm smiling because that is the solution. High management consultancy. Yeah, I love that word.
Yes, definitely. No, like that's again, there's certain aspects to it, right? That it's not a very clear visual, right? So in some certain cases, yes, there are activities which to you might sound vague, but that's how companies are operating.
Got it. So a lot of people have asked for the recording of this webinar. The recording will be available. I think it should be on Park Launch's pages. And a lot of people have also, they're asking specifically about different verticals. I see your questions about hotel, but there's a question which is coming again and again, and we have spoken about it, but let's repeat it just because it's an important question. What's the fees of setup? I'm not asking about your fees, but in terms of the government's charges of setting up a company. So if a Pakistani company is thinking about setting up a business in Saudi Arabia in dollars, what's the kind of budget should they think in their mind for that setup?
Look, if you're looking to, again, work with an expansion partner, which is always recommended, also because we are an expansion partner, but if you're looking at that, you're looking at about, I want to say about $12,000 to $34,000 in terms of USD, right? Again, depends on what services you're looking for. If you just speak of the Ministry of Investment foreign-owned license, that is 12,000 Saudi riyals for the first year, right? To be very specific on that. That does not leave your company operational. That is just to be able to have that legal entity in place. So that would be my opinion on it. But at the same time, look, here's my biggest issue, right? Especially, and I would say us Pakistanis, we're sometimes to blame for this, okay? And it is the fact that we will always look for the cheaper alternative, right? Now, when you're expanding into countries within the Middle East, where even the language is not the same language as yours, which is, you know, either Urdu or English, you want to be able to have that peace of mind that everything in terms of the power of attorney, any translations that are needed to be done, all of that process is very, very key in this situation, right? Like a part of what we do, for example, is tax registration, and we work with our taxation partner who does, you know, registrations for all of our clients. And that is one thing where you wouldn't want to try and do that yourself because of the whole compliance related issues, right? So yes, if you want just the license fees, you're looking at 12,000 Saudi riyals, right?
12,000 Saudi riyals, which is around $3,000, right?
Approximately, yes.
But then it goes up after the first year. I think the fees is higher.
So for an established business, you're in terms of just the fee of, again, that same license, you're looking at $62,000. 62,000 Saudi riyals for the second year, and the year after that, and so forth.
So this is important. So I just want to clarify that, just emphasize on that. So in the first year, the fees is less, which is 12,000 Saudi riyals, but it jumps up to 60,000 Saudi riyals in the second year.
Exactly. Yes.
So I'm just, because a lot of the people on the call will be startups who will be thinking from a budgeting perspective. So that's the cost. They should be at least, that's the least cost, and then there's your charges and the tax charges and other charges. So ballpark again.
I do want to highlight one other factor, Ali, that you just mentioned, which is startups, right? For startups, it's different because yes, they can perform the same activities, but they can go down the route, which we like to call the entrepreneur investment license, entrepreneurship investment license, right? Where you're still doing this similar activities, but your renewals, for example, instead of 62,000, you're looking at 2,000 Saudi riyals. And again, like we can have that conversation, we can have a one-on-one specific to what that looks like, but this is for companies that are backed by a VC. Astrolabs being one of the first incubators, we're able to provide that incubation letter, and through our relationship with MISA, we might be able to find an alternative for this. But there is an option for startups, which is the entrepreneur investment license, where the renewals are much less. Right, you're looking at 2,000 Saudi riyals in terms of your renewals in comparison to the 62,000 Saudi riyals, which would be in effect after the first 5 years of you being present in the kingdom.
Right. Thank you. And I'm just conscious of time, and there are a lot of questions, but let me ask like one last question for both of you, and then I'll come back to both of you for a final comment, which is Tasawar, a lot of people are asking that, you know, the Pakistani company, can they still set up, or is it better to come as a UK or a US company or a Dubai company? And also from an investment perspective, and then is there any do you feel there's any discrimination from a Pakistani companies expanding? And there's a second question which I want to ask you is that somebody's asking that if they get only one GM visa, so they set up the company, they get one GM visa, is that sufficient to just come over there and win business and then, you know, pass the business back to Pakistan? Are there any capital controls or any policies or which repatriation of profits, etc., which stop this kind of business from happening?
So I'll answer the first question of the location of what the parent company should come from. Look, from selfishly speaking, and also benefiting the client, it often helps a company coming from the GCC, so UAE, simply because all documentation should come in Arabic. So when you typically have a company already in the UAE, there's already the Arabic element done, so you don't need to get it legally translated. That's the only difference it makes to us. Other than that, a company can come from anywhere in the world, and we'll be delighted to receive them. And there's no issues from any company and no form of racism towards that at all. So there's no issue down there. In terms of one GM visa and how big a team, actually that's a very good question. So we find that especially the smaller clients, that's how they start off. So they may hire a local admin person, bring out to GM, win over some business, or they've already been talking to somebody and they're at the verge of doing some business, and then they're looking to expand that down here. Normally they're asking us to get everything done overnight, because they want to win that business and invoice for that business. So I think just to kind of summarize, it doesn't matter to us. They can come from Pakistan, UK, UAE. We only want UAE license because of the Arabic element. It helps. If they don't have that, it doesn't matter. We can get it legally translated, all the documents. Number two, doing business, you can start off with a one-man show and win that business over. Look, I think what you have to keep in mind as someone doing business here is, if you can win over business because you've got the correct infrastructure from your parent company, you will win over that business. And you have the ability to scale into Saudi Arabia. Just because you've set up doesn't mean you'll get the business. The work needs to be put in. But most people expanding out to Saudi Arabia already understand that. And they understand how much business and opportunity is, which is why they come out down here in the first place. There's no guesswork in setting up in Saudi.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Saad, the last question for you. You, of course, deal with a lot of VC funds over there. Are there any particular sectors which you think are hot, where Pakistani companies and the companies who are watching this and are on the call should focus on? Where do you see the best opportunities for Pakistani technology companies as well as Pakistani tech talents?
In terms of Pakistani tech talents, right? There is quite a few opportunities present there because there's so many startups expanding into the region. In terms of our relationships with the VCs, we are looking at a lot of tech. I would say it's sort of anything from like fintech to just generally tech is going up. Obviously, with the India or Pakistan. So high level, there is opportunities present. If I had to pinpoint it just based on what we've been seeing in the past month or so, fintech has been quite popular.
Thank you for that, Saad. Tasawar, any final comments and any sectors which you highlight are really hot and which you think Pakistani companies have a good opportunity in expanding?
Honestly, there's everything under the sun, but tech is popular. So anything with the word tech, agri-tech, fintech, insurtech, edutech, all of these businesses are gaining a lot of traction down here. We see a lot of interest for industrial businesses, large industrial manufacturing. There's a land here, power is very affordable down here, and cost of employing people is very affordable. So that's also a popular sector. Marketing, entertainment, PR, those kind of sectors are always very popular. And I think someone asked obviously about hotels, but hospitality is a popular sector because the number of events and kind of hotels and Red Sea and big projects that are coming along. It's worth looking at that. So look, there's every sector, there's some boom in that sector.
No, thank you so much. And we have 5 minutes past our 1 hour schedule, but I think
Saudi Ali, you'll never make it on time.
But it's a great place, and I think I'm super excited about Saudi Arabia. I think it's a massive opportunity. Whenever I go back, I get goosebumps over there. Just because of the energy, you can feel the energy, you can feel the vibe. I think the people in the government and even the government leaders I've interacted with are extremely warm, extremely hospitable. It's difficult to actually match their hospitality. It gets embarrassing. It's a young population. It's the people you deal with have energy. They're highly educated. They're happy, which is the most important thing. So my recommendation to anybody who's listening to this and who's on the call is that whatever you've heard about Saudi, or whatever you've read about it from the past, if you need to update your mental map, and you must go and visit and see the opportunities. And that's why we arranged this webinar, especially with these two gentlemen, because I think they can help you in your journey towards expanding to Saudi Arabia. I think I said I was on a call with a US think tank, and I said to them that I think that Pakistani tech talent can play the same role in Saudi Arabia, which Pakistani doctors play in the US healthcare system. So, you need to be an integral part of that. And I think it's an opportunity which all of Pakistan should be aware of and should avail, because it's once in a lifetime opportunity. Saad called it as Dubai on steroids. And certainly, I think Saudi will outpass what Dubai achieved, just because, as Tasawar mentioned, it's a bigger economy, more people, and more money, and it's growing, and they know where their true north is. So I strongly recommend all of you to read the Vision 2030 document. And if you have follow-up questions, which I know a lot of you have, because I've not gone through all of your questions because of the time, please do contact Saad and Tasawar, and please, both of you, do share your contact details and anything else which you have to offer.
How do we share our contact details? What's easier for you?
Saad has already written that on chat, so Tasawar, if you
way
could
ahead
also...
of me.
Response time, Tasawar. I do just want to add my final thoughts. Look, honestly, as a Pakistani born person, I have, on a social level, apart from just using Astrolabs it's just a platform that I'm able to use and take advantage of to be able to help companies, especially with the economic, political, whatever situation that is going on in Pakistan. I feel like it's sad, but at the same time, I'm grateful that I have this platform as Astrolabs to be able to help companies. So even if you're not looking to set up or expand with Astrolabs, please give me the opportunity to at least educate you about what the process looks like. Any questions, feel free to connect with me over email, over I'm obviously going to have another trip back to Pakistan after seeing the potential over there very soon. So if you want to meet up in person, I'll definitely be announcing that on my LinkedIn, and then we can maybe have a roundtable discussion. But I'd really like to thank you, Ali, for giving me this opportunity on a social level to be able to at least access the community that we hold so dearly to ourselves.
It's a pleasure. And Tasawar, any final comments?
No, thank you so much. I think some of the people who have joined this forum have been reaching out, so that's always nice, and we'll make sure that we give them the preferential treatment that they deserve. And of course, thank you for providing this, Saad. Pleasure to be on the other side with you. And
pleasure learning from you, to be honest. So I think we should connect off the record.
We should.
I'd love to learn based on your expertise. I think what you're doing and what we're doing, everything is great. Whatever we can do to help, I think we should continue that movement.
Yeah, building the ecosystem. Absolutely.
Great. I'm glad that we're all connecting, and that's the spirit of Park Launch community. So, Alifat, thank you so much for allowing this to happen and for creating the community. So that's all from my end. Khudafis.